to Bedtime Myths and Mysteries, where ancient stories are not comfort or lullabies, but warnings. This tale comes from a time when monsters were real, when fear had teeth and nightmares walked the world breathing fire. This is not a dragon, not a lion. This is the Chimera, a hybrid nightmare, a creature that should never have existed at all.
The Chimera was not born in the way living things are meant to be born. It was assembled by horror. A lion's body, broad and powerful, meant to dominate the land. From its back rose the head of a goat, screaming, snarling, biting at the air like a parasite that had learned to think. And for a tail, no fur, no muscle shaped for balance, but a living serpent, venomous and restless, striking at anything that came too close. 3 creatures, 3 instincts, 1 body. Nothing in nature agrees to this kind of compromise. And that's exactly why the Chimera terrified even the gods. Chimera was not clever. It did not scheme or seduce. It did not bargain or trick. It destroyed because destruction was the only language its mismatched body understood. Wherever it went, the land burned. Fields turned to ash. Livestock vanished. Villages were erased so completely that even their names were forgotten. Survivors spoke of the sound first. Not a roar, but several voices screaming at once, overlapping, arguing, unified only in violence. The ancient poet said the Chimera breathed fire, but that description undersells the horror. This was not a single stream of flame. It was chaotic combustion, bursts of heat that came without warning, fire that seemed to erupt from within the creature's chest as if the body itself could not contain its rage. The lion's jaws crushed stone. The goat's head snapped at riders, pulled from their horses. The serpent tail struck from behind, injecting death long after victims thought they had escaped. The Chimera lived in Lycia, a rugged land of cliffs and narrow passes, terrain that favored ambush and terror. Travelers learned to recognize the signs: scorched rock, melted metal, bones fused into blackened shapes that no longer looked human. Entire caravans disappeared. Kings sent soldiers. Soldiers did not return. Weapons were found warped by heat. Shields split, armor peeled open like fruit, left too long in the sun. This creature was not an accident of nature. Ancient storytellers traced its bloodline to monsters who existed only to prove that the world could still go wrong. Its parents were said to be Typhon and Echidna, forces of chaos, storms given flesh, beings whose sole contribution to creation was to test how much destruction it could endure. The Chimera was their masterpiece, a thing that should not be able to breathe, let alone survive. But it did both, violently. Fear spread faster than fire. Parents stopped letting children play near the roads. Shepherds abandoned their flocks. Smoke on the horizon no longer meant a distant hearth. It meant the Chimera was feeding. And here is the cruel truth the myth forces us to confront. The Chimera did not hunt heroes. It hunted ordinary people. It devoured farmers, travelers, families. It did not care about glory. It cared about hunger. Eventually, desperation reached the ears of a king who thought he could solve the problem by turning it into someone else's funeral. That someone was Bellerophon, a man already burdened with false accusations and political traps. The king did not expect him to survive. The Chimera was meant to erase him quietly, leaving no questions behind. Bellerophon was no stranger to danger, but even he understood what he was being sent to face. You do not fight a creature like the Chimera on the ground. You do not charge it. You do not outmuscle it. Every part of it is designed to kill you in a different way. And so Bellerophon did something no other warrior could do. He took to the sky, riding Pegasus, the winged horse born of blood and sea foam. From above, the Chimera looked less like a beast and more like a living argument, muscle pulling in opposing directions, heads snapping at shadows, fire bursting upward in frustrated arcs. The creature sensed the threat and roared, flame clawing at the air, nearly catching Pegasus mid-flight. The heat alone could have cooked a man alive. Bellerophon did not win with strength. He won with understanding. He knew the Chimera's greatest weapon was also its weakness. Fire requires breath. Breath requires lungs, and lungs can be poisoned. Ancient versions of the story tell that he tipped his spear with lead. When the Chimera inhaled to unleash its flames, the lead melted, pouring into its throat, flooding its chest, suffocating the fire that kept it alive. The beast fell, not gracefully, not quietly, but violently, collapsing into the earth it had terrorized, its many voices finally silenced. The land did not heal quickly. Burn scars remain long after the flames die. Memory lingers longer than ash. And that is where most retellings stop. Monster slain, hero victorious, order restored. But the Chimera refuses to stay buried, because the Chimera is not just a creature. It is an idea that refuses to die. A hybrid nightmare. A warning about what happens when boundaries are ignored. When things meant to remain separate are fused together without care or restraint. The Chimera represents fear of the unnatural, not because it's unfamiliar, but because it's wrong. It shows us a world where harmony collapses into contradiction, where survival itself becomes an act of violence. Even today, we use the word chimera to describe impossible combinations, false hopes, unstable creations, dreams stitched together without logic, promises that look powerful but collapse under their own weight. The monster lives on in language because the fear it embodies never truly left us. The ancient Greeks understood something uncomfortable. Not all threats come from the outside. Some are built, designed, assembled piece by piece by arrogance, desperation, or unchecked ambition. The Chimera is what happens when creation forgets responsibility. And perhaps that is the most terrifying part of all. Because the Chimera did not crawl out of the underworld. It walked the same roads as ordinary people. It burned the same fields that once fed families. It made the world feel unsafe, not through mystery, but through certainty. Certainty that something out there does not care if you are brave, good, or innocent. So tonight, as you settle deeper into the quiet, remember this. Monsters are not always singular. Sometimes they are combinations. Sometimes they are compromises gone wrong. Sometimes they are warnings disguised as legends. The Chimera was slain, but the fear it represents, of things that should not exist, of power without balance, of creations that consume rather than coexist, that fear still breathes. And if you listen closely, in the crackle of a distant fire, in the way shadows overlap just wrong, you might still hear it. 3 voices, 1 body, waiting. Thank you for spending this time with Bedtime Myths and Mysteries. If you enjoy stories that refuse to soften their edges, that treat ancient myths as living warnings rather than dusty tales, make sure you subscribe and return for the next descent into the shadows. Until then, sleep lightly, and remember, some nightmares were never meant to fade.